This week, alarming new reporting from the Washington Post revealed the FBI recovered top secret information about a foreign nation's nuclear capabilities during its search of former President Trump's home. According to the paper, some documents retrieved were so secret, only the president and a small number of senior level officials had access to them. And on Wednesday, former President Trump's former Attorney General, Bill Barr, weighed in on the legal jeopardy Trump faces.
There is no scenario legally under which the president gets to keep the government documents, whether it's classified or unclassified. If it deals with government stuff and it's government, it goes back to the government.
Meanwhile, this week, a federal judge appointed by Trump granted his request to have a third party, known as a special master, to review the documents seized from his home. But the DOJ has filed an appeal to overturn that ruling. The DOJ is also requesting that the judge pause her related order, temporarily blocking the government from accessing the documents as part of its ongoing investigation. Joining me to discuss this and more, Nia Malika Henderson, senior political analyst for CNN. And here in studio, Devlin Barrett, national security and law enforcement reporter for the Washington Post, the man who gave us all that reporting, and Amy Walters, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. And I love having to say your name twice, so that's great. So thank you all for being here. Devlin, you, of course, had the striking reporting this week of this nuclear documents retrieved of foreign nationals' capabilities. What more can you tell us about what was retrieved and the scope of all of this?
So obviously, there was a lot of classified information, and there were a lot of levels, but part of our reporting showed that some of this stuff was incredibly sensitive. And so one of the documents, one of the sets of material that recovered involved a foreign government's military defenses, up to not just their conventional defenses, but their nuclear capabilities as well. And obviously that's a big concern. That's not the kind of thing that anyone wants roaming around out there in the wild. The other piece of the reporting this week is that some of this stuff was so tightly held that only a small number of cabinet-level officials or near cabinet-level officials were authorized to even tell anyone about it, meaning that this stuff was so closely held, dozens of people in the government, some of it, that, you know, it's among the most closely guarded secrets in the American government. And that's part of why there was so much concern with the intelligence community.
And it's a window into what Bill Barr said, which is that this wasn't just sort of forgetting your library card and taking it with you. This is really, really big, incredibly important documents. There's also, of course, this fight over the special master. Tell us a little bit about how this might impact the DOJ's investigation, how it might even stall it, given the fact that the judge is saying that they shouldn't have access to the documents at this time.
Right. So the judge has basically told the government, you cannot use the classified information you took from Mar-a-Lago. And what we've just seen is that the Justice Department has filed a response saying, Your Honor, you have to undo that restriction because we can't do the work we need to do to protect national security with that restriction in place. Their argument is, one, there could be more stuff out there that we haven't found, and if we can't look at the stuff we have found, we might not be able to trace it back to other things that might be out there. That's important because they haven't made that suggestion before. The other part of it is, part of what's going on in the government is there's a damage assessment happening right now. And the government said in this newest filing, we cannot properly do the damage assessment without the FBI being able to look at what they found in the search. And so that issue is now back before the judge, and we don't know yet how the judge is going to take this and how Trump's lawyers are going to take this.
And sticking with you, Devlin, and thinking about the other unknowns of this, because there are so many questions to ask a DOJ reporter such as yourself. Bill Barr, former Attorney General Bill Barr, this week he said he believes former President Trump shouldn't be charged, but he also said in the same breath that the DOJ, he believes, is getting closer and closer to having enough evidence to be able to indict him. What do you know about this big decision facing Attorney General Merrick Garland, and how it squares with what Bill Barr is saying here?
So a couple things. One, it's still pretty early in the investigation. I know that public attention tends to move faster than the Justice Department investigators move.
You don't say.
But yeah, but we're still fairly early. The other issue here is, keep in mind that the original priority of this search was to just go get the material. It is the intelligence community looks at something like this being out there in a hotel or a club or a private residence and thinks, that's dangerous. We have to get that back. So they have sort of met that first problem by just taking the material they can find back. And then they have to work through, okay, are there crimes here? Was there willful violation of the law here? And that legal jeopardy is definitely not over for anyone, but it could take months to sort out.
Yeah. Could make months to sort out. As it's being sorted out, Nia, you have, of course, former Attorney General Bill Barr, who has been very critical and saying that former President Trump shouldn't, frankly, have taken these documents. But then you, of course, also have Republicans like Lindsey Graham, who are full-throatedly giving their defenses of former President Trump. What do you make of the politics of all of this?
Well, listen, it's complicated for Republicans. Remember, when this first happened, you had an array of Republicans essentially saying this was good for Donald Trump. Maybe it would speed up his announcement of another run for the presidency, and it had brought people back into the fold of Trump world who may have turned against Trump. That whole idea, I think, is a little out the window now. You certainly have Republicans who are true Trumpists, Lindsey Graham, somebody like Marco Rubio, who, of course, is on the ballot this go round in November. So he needs to hold Donald Trump close and not incur his wrath. So that's why you see him so very much out there pointing a finger at the DOJ, saying this was politicized. But you don't necessarily hear a lot of Republicans at this point offering a full-throated defense of Donald Trump. At some point, I think someone in the House said, well, listen, maybe he needed these documents because he's writing his memoirs, right? I mean, which is a laughable excuse that makes no sense based on what we know about Donald Trump and just you're not supposed to have classified documents. But that kind of, I think, line from kind of run-of-the-mill Republicans who are in Congress on the House and the Senate side, that's not really happening as much anymore. Mitch McConnell was asked about this a few days ago, and he essentially said, listen, he's following along and learning about this as everyone else is, but he did note that he's, it's sort of wall-to-wall coverage of this. Hint, hint, this is likely not so great for Republicans, for the Republican brand, to have Donald Trump back in the news. But it is a real tightrope, I think, particularly for Republicans who are on the ballot, who want to hold that Trump base close, but also want to be seen as law and order Republicans who aren't going after the FBI.
And Amy, talking about walking that tightrope, I want to come to you and get your thoughts on the fact that the GOP doesn't seem to be on the same page here as Nia just laid out. They're all sort of trying to figure out what to say about this at this point.
Yeah, and especially if you're a swing state candidate or whether a swing state or a swing congressional district candidate, you would like Donald Trump to not be in the news. That would be the best for you, right? Many of these Republicans, their game plan for this election had been set months ago, and it was pretty simple. We're going to talk about Joe Biden, who's unpopular in our state or district. We're going to talk about the rising cost of living. We're going to talk about how Democrats are responsible for that. It was going to be a pretty easy 1, 2, 3. And it was working like that until, well, I think two things. It wasn't just the Mar-a-Lago situation, but the fact that the January 6th hearings I think they broke through more than many people had expected. It's not that people changed their opinions about Donald Trump. I think if you support Donald Trump, you still see this as a political situation. I still don't think voters were necessarily tuning in and paying attention to every little detail, but it was out there kind of floating out in the ether, right? And it was a reminder to many independent voters who might have shown up in 2018 or 2020, not to vote necessarily for Democrats, but to vote against Donald Trump, to vote for, we want to return to normal, we want the end of the chaos, that this chaos is still there. And it was in front of them day in and day out. It was just sort of out there constantly. Yeah. That's not where Republicans want the last 2 months of this election to be focused on.
Well, and thinking about sort of where we're going next, Evelyn, talk a bit about sort of where this investigation is going next. We have some deadlines coming up. We also have in the DOJ filing, some people are reading it saying there might be more classified documents out there. What's your reporting telling you?
So I think a couple things. One, we are still in sort of this holding pattern, waiting to see how much is the judge's special master mindset going to slow down the criminal investigation. We could know more about that in a matter of hours or days or weeks. It's not really clear yet. So that will be one big sticking point in this process potentially. The other issue is, as the government and the investigators go through this material, they're going to have to make decisions on whether they think there is criminal exposure here. And so that could be, obviously, that could have political consequences, that could have legal consequences. And it's still very high stakes for everyone involved because there's still a lot we don't know. Obviously, we're reporting every day, but there's still a lot we don't know. And there are, you know, serious potential consequences for a lot of the players in this as it goes forward.
And to think about the consequences, there's something that a question that the team here at Washington Week, we were all sort of thinking about, and that is, we're a month into this investigation, but some folks, especially as we learn more with your reporting about these possible nuclear documents, why did it take so long for the government to go in there? Why did it take so long for us to reach this point, given the fact that we're learning more and more about these documents?
So I think you have to understand the timeline, because this is sort of a slow building crisis that starts with the National Archives of all places. Like, one of the amazing things about sort of the Trump era is that the crises sometimes come from the most unexpected places, like the National Archives asking for a weather map and other things that were just part of the presidential record, and they wanted essentially for history. And Trump and his advisors kind of fighting them, or at least slow walking those requests. But what really happens is, in January, Trump's team turns over some stuff. And those boxes turn out to be full of classified papers. And that raises the level of alarm considerably. Yeah. But then what happens in the spring is you've got demands for, okay, they get a subpoena. Just give us all the classified information back. And that's bad enough. But in the face of that subpoena, the government believes that Trump and his lawyers and advisors did not, in fact, give it all back. They were withholding it, and they seem to be intentionally withholding it if you believe some of the things in these court filings. And so it's really in June that this becomes sort of a full-fledged, oh, geez, what is this? And so I understand the sort of frustration of why did this take so long, but it's really sort of a 2-month difficulty, like serious. It becomes very serious very quickly in June.
Why, thank you for breaking that down. I think for our team and for people at home that are watching this, that will definitely help them understand why we're now living through this investigation. So thank you so much, Devlin, for joining us and for sharing your reporting.